Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, suppose we should start moving our attention toward the Minnesota Vikings here as we get closer and closer to that game. The injury report so far, not the best. I'm going to be honest with you. The Vikings more or less are healthy. The only guy not participating is cornerback Fabian Moreau. Everybody else that is on the list is a full participant, including Harrison Smith, foot injury, Jalen Redmond, concussion, Blake Cashman, hip, CJ Ham, ankle, Patrick Jones, knee, Josh Oliver, wrist, Ivan Pace Jr., hamstring. Packers have got Jaire, Ballantyne, Bullard, Dillard, Hopper, Jenkins, Kraft, Musgrave, Walker, Watson, and Evan Williams on the practice report. Tyron Hopper, I was so excited to see him. He played about half of a snap and ends up with an ankle injury, but it is. Same with Andre Dillard. Guy came in for 5 seconds and has a concussion. I guess on the positive side, Javon Bullard did come back. So he has been limited in participation, so we'll see how that goes. There's some relatively positive news about Watson in that they're saying they're going to leave it open to him playing. I would lean toward he probably won't. We'll see. He hasn't practiced all week. Evan Williams has not practiced all week. Quay Walker, as you can imagine, has not practiced all week. Hopper did go from not participating to limited. Elton Jenkins just popped up and did not participate on Thursday with a knee injury. That is a new thing. I don't know the extent of that quite yet. I did see Matt Schneidman listed him as veteran rest, so I'm hoping that's really all it is. That, he does have a little bit of a banged up knee, but the reason he didn't participate is veteran rest. I don't know. As for the rest of it, Luke Musgrave has been limited. I feel relatively good about Musgrave. I feel like what we're probably seeing is him just continually being eased back in, so he'll probably play a few more snaps this week than he did last week. Never know. Tucker Kraft has a hip injury. I don't know the extent of it, but he's limited. He should be okay. Hopper, by the way, ankle injury, didn't practice on Wednesday. Oh, I said that already, limited on Thursday. Andre Dillard, practice on Wednesday, didn't show up on the report until Thursday. I don't know if he got dinged in practice or what the situation is there. With Hopper and Dillard, you kind of just hope you don't have to see them, to be honest. Not because I don't like them, but for the sake of the health of the team. Corey Ballantyne has been full all week, so he should be good. And then Jaire Alexander was full on Wednesday and then limited on Thursday, so he went backwards. The folks of the local media pressed Matt LaFleur on it pretty hard, as you can imagine. And essentially he doesn't like to talk about it, obviously, but obviously you have to talk about it, so they got to push him on it. The quote was something to the effect of he doesn't necessarily think he has a better outlook this week. That sounded stupid. Let me find the exact quote. Via Domofsky, Packers coach Matt LaFleur, when asked if Jaire Alexander has a better chance to play this week, quote, "I'd say probably not." Now, I don't think he's going to play, first of all, but that said, I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of people are viewing this as probably not, meaning probably not going to play. And that's kind of what he said. But really all he said is, essentially, is he looking better? Not really. He has about the same chances, right? And it's not better chances, it's the same chances. And last week they said there is a chance he could play, which would mean that there's a chance he could play. You see what I'm saying? It's the same probability that he plays this week as it was last week. And I don't mean after we found out he wasn't going to play. I'm talking about Matt LaFleur's looking at it saying he's given it the same odds he did last week prior to finding out he wasn't going to play. Now, again, do I think he's going to play? Absolutely not. Do I think that there's something more going on? I don't know. I really don't. Here's the only thing I'll add, because this is obviously a touchy subject and whatnot. Do you remember when the thing with Devondre Campbell, with the 49ers, it all blew up, and I went through some of his quotes that he had in Green Bay, and one of the things, and it was around this time of the year, one of the issues that he had was he was hurt, he played hurt, he didn't play at 100%, and he got thrown under the bus. And so his attitude was, and this is around the time that he wasn't the only one with this sort of attitude, and I do think Jaire was in that mix of guys that were getting hurt and were playing hurt and all that kind of stuff. The general attitude of him and maybe other people was, I'm not playing hurt. Because look, I know that there is so Matt LaFleur is not the one that makes the decision here. It really comes down to the training staff, but also I think the training staff is limited in their ability to fully understand the situation. They know what's wrong with him, but to some degree, whether or not he's good enough to play is going to come down to Jaire. And I don't know if that's the case. Maybe he's saying he's raring to go and he wants to play and they're shutting him down. That's entirely possible. But when you're getting to the point where they're letting him practice, he's able to practice, and he's questionable all the way up to game time, what is the decision being made? And I know that Matt LaFleur's talked about, we look at they're watching the tape and looking at his speed and all that stuff. I'm just at the only possible weird little thing that could be happening, not saying I think it's happening, is whether Jaire is maybe being a little bit more unwilling to play hurt than some other people would. Remember with Jordan, there was a question of why did you bring him back so fast? And I think it was similarly, Matt LaFleur, again, doesn't really have a lot of say over this. You've got the training staff saying he's fine, and then Jordan saying he's fine. He doesn't feel any pain. He's ready to go. And players do have the capacity to lie, as many of them probably do, saying, no, I'm fine, put me in. I mean, some of these guys, clearly not fine. They're out there playing with broken bones and everything else. Just the most horrific things, and they get shot up with pain medicine and everything else, which, don't get me wrong, I'm almost positive that if they really wanted to push this, they could give Jaire an injection, put him on the field, and say, go play. So I don't want to start a whole thing and turn everybody against Jaire, but I'm, as far as speculating, sure, let's speculate. It is an odd situation. It's very rare that somebody's practicing and they seem perfectly fine, and then game time, it's like, well, he practiced all week. He seemed fine. He was full participant. Is he ready to go? Like, no, he's not going to play. What? Why was he a full participant in practice? Why shouldn't he have been limited in practice? Shouldn't he have been holding him back so he wasn't putting so much strain on his knee? Shouldn't he have just been not practicing? What are you talking about? And that applies to the idea of, well, they're just keeping him fresh, which, by the way, I don't know that necessarily happens. We got a lot of superstars that are battling injuries right now, and they're going out on the field and they're playing. I would understand that if we were doing that with our quarterback and pass rushers and everybody else, but it's just the one guy. So he's got either some very weird injury or there's some other little formula being mixed in that I'm not entirely sure what it is. But at the end of the day, I don't expect him to play. I really don't. But let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings a little bit, shall we? So, incredibly impressive, first of all. Kevin O'Connell, great coach, 13-2. Absolutely, massively exceeded everybody's expectations. Giant mea culpa apologies for every comment I made about Sam Darnold. Some Vikings fans, let's call it half the fan base, 25% of the fan base, hyping up this guy could actually be something, told them they were crazy, whatever, right? He's been fantastic. Doesn't appear to be a fluke in any way, shape, or form. I think you have a serious quarterback conundrum coming up, to be completely honest. Offensive coordinator Wes Phillips is the man behind Kevin O'Connell, helping him out. Brian Flores has been the man on defense. Looking at some of the more basic stats, from a points standpoint, just points scored and points allowed, they're 9th in points scored, 3rd in points allowed. As far as yards on offense, they're 12th. On defense, they've given up the 15th most. Some of the other things on offense, honestly, not massively impressive. As scary as they seem with a quarterback that's working, scary wide receivers, Aaron Jones, the whole thing. The stats are not the greatest. They're 19th in turnovers, 18th in fumbles lost, 16th in interceptions. They are 6th in net yards per attempt passing, which is great. They're 29th in rushing touchdowns and 27th in rushing yards per attempt. Their percent of drives ending in a score is 11th. Percent of drives ending in a turnover, they rank 14th. Average time per drive, they're 20th. Average plays per drive, they're 27th. Net yards per drive, they're 15th. And points per drive, they're 11th. Defense is a little bit more impressive. They're number one in turnovers. They are number one in interceptions. They are 12th in net yards per attempt passing, so not the greatest, but run defense is much better. They are second in yards, first in touchdowns, and second in yards per attempt, allowing just 3.9 yards per attempt. Percent of drives ending in an offensive score, for some reason, they're dead last, the 32nd. I don't know how that works, but there you go. Percent of drives ending in a turnover, they rank third. Average time per drive, 9th. Plays per drive, 14th. Yards, 12th. And points, number 1. I have no idea how you reconcile those two things other than every team just gets field goals every single time. I don't have a clue. How you can be number 1 in points per drive at 1.6 and also be dead last in percentage of drives ending in an offensive score. I don't know. I don't, but that's what it is. That's the reality. While we're in the area here, I'm looking over at Pro Football Reference. Shout out to them for all their insights. We went through the injury report, but they've also got guys that are on injury reserve. And the guy that probably deserves the most attention is Christian Darrisaw. They did go out and replace him, but that's a big one. They also have Mekhi Blackman, Jeremy Flax, J.J. McCarthy, Takai Taimani, and Najee Thompson. Looking at when you win, when you lose thing, obviously it's very difficult when they only have 2 losses. However, this one's actually pretty straightforward. The Vikings are undefeated when the opposing team scores less than 30 points. They are 0-2 when a team scores 30 points. Rams scored 30-1. Detroit scored 31-1. It's a heck of a bar to try to clear. I'm not sure if the Packers are going to have to because I think the defense is going to help us in that regard, at least hopefully. But that's been the standard so far this year. Turnovers have had strangely no impact on this team. The 2 games that they lost, they had 1 and 0 turnovers. So 2 or more turnovers, and they're undefeated on offense. So okay. Bailing out that quarterback, I guess. I got to be honest, I'm shocked by this. Their defense has a turnover in every single game this year. Every single one. Interestingly enough, on that point, though, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only 5 games have they had 1 turnover. Every other game, they've had more than 1 turnover in a game. Up to last time, which was the Green Bay Packers game, they had 4. They only beat us by 2 points in that game, you may remember. Interestingly enough, though, their 2 losses came in those games, which means they are 3-2 when their defense only gets 1 turnover. First of all, it'd be nice to be the first team to not have a single turnover, in which case I have to assume that's an automatic W, but I guess I don't know. Perhaps, well, I'll tell you what, let's take a break and then we'll do this. I want to go through their games. You've probably heard this already, and obviously we've talked about this before. Most teams only beat bad teams, but I think it's very much worth looking at exactly what this team has been able to do, because it's impressive in that they continually win and are very consistent. I mean, even good teams have bad days and lose to teams that are good, medium, and bad. But still, the high-quality nature of the team has very rarely shown its head. We'll take a look at that on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. All right, so if we look at the games that they've played so far this year, and obviously the ones closer to the end matter more, but let's go through all of them anyways. Week 1, they beat the Giants. Obviously, the Giants are a horrifically bad team. Week 2, they beat the 49ers. At the time, we probably thought they were good. They are not. They beat both of these teams, though, sizably. 28-6 against the Giants. 23-17 is a decent margin. They beat the Texans then 34-7. At this point, it's like, holy crap, this team is legit. They're scary. I'm not going to pretend the Texans are a terrible team because they're not. Then week 4, you get the Packers. The Packers are in Green Bay with a quarterback that should not have been playing. He's coming back from injury. A billion interceptions in this game. As I said, the Packers threw 4, although they did get 3 back, so it's just a +1. But still, 4 freaking interceptions in this game. Packers scored 29 points with a offense that was in no way clicking. The drops were significantly worse. Jordan was significantly worse. It was maybe his worst game of the season. And the Packers lost by 2. It was 31-29. Now, 2 points on that. Number one, the offense is nowhere near as good. And this is at a time when Minnesota's defense was better. Minnesota's defense is not improving. It's declining. And so Minnesota at its peak gave up 29 points to an offense that is 50% of what it is today. And also our defense, I'm not going to say it's impossible they give up 31. Detroit obviously did a number on our defense. But our defense is playing at a significantly higher level than they were in week 4. We had no pass rush. We were living entirely on interceptions, and we did get 3. So that's, obviously important. 31 may have had more to do with us giving the ball away 4 times than it was our defense, but still, that's pretty incredible that it was just a 2-point game when you go back and look at that Packers team and go, that team kind of sucks. I mean, it's just, comparatively, the team today would have beat the living crap out of the Week 4 Green Bay Packers. Anyways, continuing on. And remember, they've had 3 really impressive games prior to that. Then you've got the New York Jets, terrible football team. They won that game 23-17. That's a 1-possession game. You only scored 23 points. That's a little iffy to me. Then you play the Detroit Lions and lose 29-31. Then you play the Rams and lose 30-20. That's not great. Not that the Rams are terrible, but the Rams are, not supposed to be on our level, and you lost by 10. Then you play the Colts, absolute dog crap. You beat them 21-13. That's good. Not so much offensively, but, 13 points. Whatever, it's fine. Then you play the Jacksonville Jaguars without their quarterback, and you beat them 12-7. Now, kudos to holding them to 7 without their quarterback and whatnot. That is a good job. You scored 12 freaking points. How is it this elite Sam Darnold with the best wide receivers in football and Aaron Jones and all this great stuff, a great tight end, how do you score 12 points? Then you play the Tennessee Titans, dog crap football team. You beat them by 10, 23-13. Again, good job defense, not very impressive offense. Then you play the Bears, and they take you to overtime. And honestly, they only lost because of their own incompetence. You won that game in overtime by 3 points. Then you play the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals are spiraling. They're a bad football team. They are, not even, I would say, on the level of Seattle. You beat them by 1 point in Week 13, 22-23. Blew out the Atlanta Falcons, 42-21. They needed that desperately to prove that we're a real football team. Blew out the Chicago Bears. Good job, 30-12. And then Seattle happens, and you beat Seattle by 3. First of all, I would like everyone that's complaining about the Packers not having beaten anyone, explain to me what on this schedule here has impressed you. Which game is impressive to you? Beating the Packers with basically a quarterback with a half a leg playing like garbage? Is that the impressive game? Obviously it's not, because you're not impressed by the Packers. It's not the Texans, because they're not good. 49ers aren't good. Giants aren't good. Jets aren't good. Colts aren't good. Jaguars aren't good. Titans aren't good. Bears aren't good. Cardinals aren't good. Falcons aren't good. Bears aren't good. Seahawks aren't good. What exactly is it that is impressive to you? There's only a handful of playoff teams here. And of the playoff teams, I don't know that any of them are massively impressive playoff teams. You got the Houston Texans, who I don't think should even be in the playoffs, but they've already clinched a spot because the AFC is garbage, especially in their own division. Texans have had a hard time all year winning 2 games in a row. Packers, we already talked about. Lions, you lost to. Rams, you lost to. Falcons might end up winning their division, but they are a really, really bad football team. And even if they turn it around now with Penix, you didn't play him against Penix. Right? Now, I contemplated, and to be honest, I did start going through and just, each and every game. I used to do this a lot, by the way. Going through each game, and for example, look at, the Giants on average give up 24.1 points per game. The Vikings scored 28, so they exceeded that by 3.9 points. And go through every single game and then do, the team's offense. They usually score this, the defense allowed this, therefore whatever. I don't necessarily need to do that because that's more or less what DVOA does. So if you're following me on social media, you can see the graphic of this on the Twitters. If not, though, I will do my best to illustrate this audibly. Talked a lot about DVOA so far and whatnot, weighted DVOA. But we've just been looking at it on a week-to-week basis rather than looking through each individual week through the season. Let me just show you what I'm talking about here. The Green Bay Packers lost to the Philadelphia Eagles and started off with a -1 DVOA. So, according to DVOA, not a lot of information, but they looked at it and said they're probably 1% worse than a typical team. They went from there to 12.9, 23.8, 12.8, 12.1, 16.2, 18.6, 18.1, 14.1, 14.3, 14.3, 18.7. So lots of fluctuation. Kind of skyrocketed early up to 23 and then dropped down to 12 and then up to 16, 18, down to 14, back up to 18. A lot of fluctuation, largely from week 4 through week 12. From 12 to 18, kind of in that range. But if you just look at it from week 11 on, it's 14.3, 18.7, 21, 24.9, 31.5, and 37. It's an arrow going straight up. Now, if we do that with the Minnesota Vikings, they started with an absolute bang week 1. They were so impressive that they had a DVOA of 72.8. Now, small sample size and all that, but that's pretty remarkable to beat a team so resoundingly or definitively, however you want to put it, that you're at 72.8. However, week 2 it dropped to 46.3, which is still great, but it's a big drop. Then 43.6, 41.5, 38.1, 41, 34.5, 28.5, 25.7, 22.6, 22.9, 22.1, 20.3, 22.1, 21.3, 19.1. Have you noticed that? 70, 40, 40, 40, 30, 40, 30, 20, 20, 20, 20, 19. And actually, that's total DVOA. It's actually worse when you do weighted DVOA. It goes from 70, 40, 40, 40, 30, 40, 30, 20, 20, 18, 18, 17, 16, 18, 17, 14. They started at 72, and even if we call that fake, they started in the 40s. Then down into the 30s, the 20s, the teens, and now they're at 14%. The Packers started from 0 and are up into the 30s. The Vikings started in the, let's call it 40s, and are down to the teens. Not only are the Packers, in a snapshot in this moment, a better football team, 14 compared to whatever it is, 37 something, 35, 32, don't care. Not only that, but look at the direction they're going. If they continue on this trajectory, they're going to be maybe barely 10% better than your average team. By the time you get into the playoffs, you're going up against teams that are 20, 30, 40, 50% DVOA. Packers 37, Detroit 32, and they're on the downswing a little bit too, but they're still at 32. Philadelphia's at 28. Tampa's at 5, but they're climbing. Washington is 15 and kind of climbing. They're bouncing all over the place, but climbing back, I guess you could say. They not only need to stop plummeting, they need to right the ship. If they don't turn this team around, if they don't start playing better, their season is done before it even got started. I don't know about one and done because there's, again, not super great teams that we're going to be going up against round 1. But I think it will be generally short-lived. I think you can argue that the offense is kind of roughly stayed the same. I mean, week 1, 21, but let's forget about that. Week 2, they're at 6%. And then it was 0, 5, -1, -1, 2, 3, 2, -2, -2, 2, 2, and then 6.4, 6.2, 6.3. So bouncing all over the place. But they started at 6. They're back to 6. Now, that's nothing massively impressive, 6% better than average. But they're in that range. But what does that mean? It means their defense is what is completely falling apart. And remember, they had this just diabolical defense to start the season, and it felt weird saying the Packers have a better defense than Minnesota because Minnesota's defense was so good. But that's clearly the situation. Week 1, they started at negative 50.2. Remember, negative is a good thing for defense. Let's disregard that. Okay, fine. Negative 35.6. 38, 34, 37, 39, 30, 21, 17, 14, 13, 12, and now 8.7. I mean, just absolutely tumbling down a hill rapidly, just picking up speed as it goes down. If you look at the Packers offense, it's kind of like a V. Kind of similar to their offense, to be honest. It started at 20, it's at 20. But it's still 20%. What is Minnesota again? They're at 6, and we're at 20%. Green Bay's offense. So it started at 20. It kind of got down to about 14 week 10, and then obviously started back 17, 18, 21, 21 is where we're sitting right now. Our defense, though, is the exact opposite of theirs. It's going in a very different direction. It started at 16, and then it was 7, and then it kind of bounced around back and forth, right? Negative 2, 2, 1, blah, 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 blah. And then you get around, let's say, week 11, you have 1.1%, so slightly worse than average. Then negative 2, negative 3.5, negative 4.5, negative 6.5, and now negative 9. The offense is ascending. The defense is ascending. The team as a whole rapidly ascending. The Vikings plummeting. So this is not to say, obviously, that the Vikings are bad. I think I've pretty well established that. I want to make it very clear because I think the consensus is the Vikings are marginally better. Although, obviously, as you can see, Vegas has given the Packers a slight edge, even in Minnesota. So I think that this is becoming somewhat common knowledge, but I just, at the very least, help you understand why that is the case. But look, it's all just coming down to probabilities, right? Out of 100 times, how many times do the Packers win? It's more than 50. It's more than 50. That's all there is to it. Is it 51? Is it 60? Is it 90? I don't really know the answer to that. But the Packers are the better team, and like I said, we're checking in. This is a check-in. You are supposed to be better than the Vikings. So go be better than the Vikings. That's it. You have lived up to your expectations, as far as I'm concerned, every week for the last several weeks. Since Chicago, which I think maybe there was some slight underperforming there. It was a little closer than it probably should have been. Chicago was doing that to everybody, whatever, doesn't matter. Bottom line is, I've been impressed to satisfied for quite a while now. Do it again. Win. Doesn't have to be win big, but win. I'll tell you what, I'm going to cut it off a little bit short today. We'll do a 2/3 podcast, I guess. And I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.